Patrick James McGough. My rank was, when I was discharged, was radioman 3rd class. And while I was in, I bought a brand new 1949 Plymouth car while I was on Missouri. Because we used to hitchhike up to Pennsylvania where I lived. And sometimes we would make it home, sometimes we went on the weekend. So I decided, I bought a car. It was a 1936 Buick. I bought it up in Pennsylvania. My father said, "You'll never get to Norfolk with that car." Well, I made 2 round trips, and I had other guys going with me back and forth. And of course they paid for the gas and different things. And I decided I'd buy a new car, I could make some money, pay for the car. You couldn't buy new cars in 1949, they were still scarce. I had to go out of town and I found a 1949 Plymouth sitting in one dealer's showroom. He didn't care whether he sold it or not. And I paid $1,900 and some for that car, brand new. And I used to put a notice up in the mess hall, Bride to Scranton or Wilkes-Barre. I took them up there. It was $15 round trip or $10 one way. And Greyhound took 18 hours, and I was doing it in 13 hours. So I had no problem getting riders. If there was some reason I couldn't, we would go down to the bus terminal in Norfolk and just say, "Anybody want to ride to Scranton or Harrisburg or whatever?" And we'd grab guys. And sometimes if I got guys from New Jersey, I would take what they call, where the Chesapeake Bay Bridge is now. That was a ferry boat ride across there. And we would get on that ferry boat, with the car, and I'd go up into Jersey if I didn't get guys from Pennsylvania. And that day, I guess I was on leave because it was like during the middle of the week. It was hard to get riders. And I had about 2 guys with me, and when we get on the ship, one of the guys came down to me, he says, "Hey Pat," he says, "I got another guy up there that would like to ride." I guess he was going to be hitchhiking. He said he'd like to ride up to New Jersey with us. And he said, "But he doesn't have any money." I said, "Well," I said, "it's okay with you guys, we'll take him up." So he brought the guy down, and the guy said, I have a bond here." He said, "I'll give you this bond, and then when on the way back, I'll pay and give you the bond back." Well, I dropped him off someplace up there in New Jersey, and on the way back on a Sunday night, we stopped for him, and he didn't show up. And we waited and waited. We had to get back to the ship, so we finally had to leave. Well, that's when the Korean War started, right after that. I mean, he wasn't on our ship, he was... So here I had that bond, and I had no way of getting a hold of him, so I sent it home. And occasionally after I got discharged, I looked in a phone book down in that area, I couldn't find him. So anyway, about 45 years ago, 45 years later, or 50 years later, my wife says, "What are we going to do with this bond?" Still had it. The $25 bond, remember, we used to pay $18.75. And at that time, I didn't have a computer, but I had what they call a web TV. You could get on the internet with that. And I had a cell phone. And I thought, well, so I got on, I put his name in on the web TV, and I got 2 addresses. One was in Georgia, and the other one was in the Carolinas. I called the one in the Carolinas, and the kid says, I try to tell him, I'm looking for someone that was in the service around 1949 to 1950 something. He says, "Mister, you got the wrong number." So the next one I called, the lady says, "Yeah, my husband was in at that time." And I said, "Well, I have something that might belong to him." And with that, I guess for some reason, he heard something going on, her husband, that he picks up. And he's thinking this is a scam. I said, "It's no scam." I said, I have something that might belong. Yeah, I said, "I don't want anything for it." I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you the first 3 numbers of your serial number, you give me the last 4. So I gave him the first 3, he reads them off, exactly right. And I said, there's also a lady's name on this bond. And he said, well, he said, that would have been my mother. I said, what was her name? He tells me, that's it. I said, hey, this is yours. So I'm gonna send it down to you. And I said, I don't want anything for it. So what I did, I made a photocopy of it before I sent it in case it got lost in the mail. I didn't want to get it lost after having it over 50 years. So I sent it down to him. And I called him up that night before I sent it. Because I looked up to see how much it was worth. It was almost $200 then, the value, because it had matured for 40 years. The bonds today are only good for 30 years, but that one was good for 40. So it was over 40. And it was almost $200. So I called him up and I said, Fred, I says, this bond's worth almost $200. He said, Pat, if I owed you that much money for that long, he says, I'm going to be in the hole. I said, no, I don't want anything. So I did, I sent it down to him, and he sent me a check back for $50 a couple of weeks later. And to this day, I mean, we're still, in fact, one trip to Florida, we stopped to visit him, and he's been emailing me half a dozen times a week ever since then. So he's made a good friend there. The poor bugger now is suffering with cancer though. But he said to me, he retired, he retired from the Navy. And he said, Pat, he said, you're the first one from the Navy to call me up. You never heard from anybody else. So that was quite an experience there.